Hey folks, this video is going to recap a recent topic, which is graphing a function by using a table and then talking about whether it's linear or nonlinear. Now, looking through some of your work there that you guys did, there are some common mistakes or errors that we often see, and I'm going to really try to highlight some of those in this video so that you can avoid those going forward, okay? All right, so here's the task as it's presented. Graph the function below using a table, and then we're going to determine if it's linear or nonlinear. Okay, so here's my function, right? Y equals negative 2x squared minus 1. Right, when I think about starting to graph this using a table, I know that my x values, right, are my inputs. So I am going to be inputting some values right here in the function, all right? And that's going to give me, after calculation, an output, all right? My y values are my outputs that I get from that function, all right? So my y value is going to be my output when I calculate, all right? Now here's the thing, and I'm going to show you just a side problem here quick. All right, if I wanted to find negative 5 squared, okay, negative 5 squared is 25, right? Because negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. Okay, here's the issue. In a calculator, let's say I just put it in the way I kind of said it, negative 5 squared, and I do that. Oh, this is wrong, right? It's not negative 25. And here's why. The calculator is reading this as 5 squared and then taking the opposite of that, okay? So we have to be really careful plugging these into a calculator. This is the right way to do it to avoid some error. I do parentheses, right? And I put my negative 5 in there because this is the value that I need to square, okay, or multiply by itself. If I square that, here we go, 25 like I should have, okay? All right, so I start with that because, go back here. One of the real important things to do here is to find your input, and I highly suggest doing this, and let's always put our input in parentheses, okay? We can do this with any function, all right? It's particularly important maybe with these ones where we're squaring though, okay? So when I'm going to put this in my calculator, when I'm going to choose inputs, it's going to be y equals negative, right? You've got to make sure you include this negative here. That was a common error. So this is negative, and 2, and then I'm going to put my input in, all right? So parentheses, I'm going to put those in red here because those are really important for me. Parentheses, okay, because my input's here and I'm going to square it, and then minus 1. Okay, so this is what I can now put in my calculator. I can use this expression, and my calculator knows how to handle that, and it's going to do what I want it to do. Okay, all right. So that was really that's where a lot of the errors came up. So I'm going to whip through this kind of quick now. Again, I'm going to pick some inputs, and like we've said, we usually want 0 and then some negatives and some positives. So I'm going to put these in. 1, 2, 3, there we go. And I'm going to take this expression and I'm going to start finding my outputs. Okay, so I'm going to grab my calculator here. All right, so here we go. Negative, that's from here, 2. And then my input's going to come next. All right, so I'm going to be careful here. I'm going to put a parentheses there. Okay, and then my first input is negative 2. All right, so I'm going to put in my first input of negative 2, like so. And then that needs to be squared. And this is how it shows up in my calculator, the little caret button. It likely does that in yours too. And then minus 1. Okay, this is the entire expression in the function I need to find. So input of negative 2, it's right here, gives me an output of negative 9. Okay, so I'm going to put that in my table here. In the interest of time, I'm going to go back and find my other ones while I'm at it here. All right, so not negative 2, but negative 1. And notice how that's just still in parentheses. This is going to calculate out just beautifully. Negative 3, okay? What if my input is 0? Right? Let's see. My input 0, and negative 1. All right, now I think I'm going to write these down so I don't forget. Negative 9, negative 3, negative 9, negative 3, and negative 1. Okay. And then grab my calculator again, and I need to do inputs 1, 2, and 3. So let's do that quick. So an input of 1 gives me negative 3. If I use an input of 2, back to negative 9, okay? And then input of 3 gives me, oh, negative 19. That's going to be a little big. All right, negative 19. Might not even fit on my graph. I'm not going to stress about it too much. Okay, like so. All right. So vast majority of the errors that came with this type of problem was in calculating those outputs, okay, and appropriately inputting your x values, okay? All right, so let's finish this up. Negative 2, negative 9. So remember x values, so that's my x-axis, this is my y-axis. So if my x is negative 2, I'm going to go negative 2, and then my y is negative 9. So I'm going to go down about there, negative 1, negative 3. Negative 1, and then down 3. 0, negative 1. So 0 for my x means I'm not going to go right or left, but I do need to go to a y value of negative 1. 1, negative 3, so positive 1, negative 3. 2, negative 9, positive 2, and down to 9. And then this one's not going to fit on the graph. 3, negative 19, well, it'd be 3, and then negative 19 is like way down there. So that's okay, right? I'm going to leave that one off. It doesn't fit. And I'm going to try to draw my graph here or sketch it out. This is definitely not linear. I can see that already. This happens to be one of those quadratics that we're going to work on more second semester. It does something like this. Okay, but for all intents and purposes right now, this is nonlinear, so I would select that. Once again, it's not forming a line on our graph, and if I look at the rates of change here, as my inputs are increasing by 1, these are definitely not constant, right? These are, this is going up by 6, and then adding 2, and then subtracting 2, so it's definitely not constant, okay? All right, so again, really careful with inputting your values. All right, I highly, highly suggest you use parentheses. Just put it right around your x value, that input, no matter what your function is. Make sure you're careful with including any negatives that are in there, and I think you'll be just fine. So there you go.